Hey guys, welcome to the second week of Film and for the fall semester of 2019. My name is Connor, and today I'm joined by my good friend Clay.
Hello.
And in preparation for Joker coming in the next couple weeks, we decided to watch King of Comedy, directed by Martin Scorsese, and that is our topic of discussion for the day. For those of you who are not aware, King of Comedy is a 1982 film directed by Martin Scorsese, starring Robert De Niro and Jerry Lewis. The plot of the film revolves around Rupert Pugkin, played by Robert De Niro, who is a struggling stand-up comedian who desperately wishes to be on a popular talk show, hosted by Jerry Lewis's character. To achieve that goal, he does a lot of unsavory things, and quite frankly makes both me and Clay very uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
So now that we've kind of gotten the early stuff out of the way, and we'll talk briefly about his connection to Joker. Todd Phillips, director of Joker, has stated that he's very much inspired by the films Martin Scorsese, with Taxi Driver and King of Comedy being particular influences. So, Clay, what are your general thoughts on the film?
So I love early Scorsese. Scorsese is easily one of my favorite directors of all time, but easily working today. I like the movie. It's just for early Scorsese, it's not one of my favorites, especially since, if I'm correct, the last Scorsese movie I watched was Raging Bull, which is like probably my second or third favorite. And you put King of Comedy next to, or in the same era, I suppose, as, you know, a Raging Bull or a Taxi Driver, another film that had a huge impact on me as a young person. It just doesn't really measure up as much. Like, it's still a really good film, and Scorsese's whole, like, Scorsese playing on the subjectivity of reality and illusion is done really, really well here, and significantly more often than in either Raging Bull or Taxi Driver, which I really appreciated. But my big thing with the movie is that, and I was talking to you a little bit about this before, De Niro is really great at being able to understand what his character needs to be. He never doesn't understand what he needs to be. But in this movie, he needs to be so awkward and uncomfortable and just cringy that he just cranks it to 11, and I'm just like, it becomes unpleasant to watch. And so, like, I dig the direction, it's just, it's hard for me to watch De Niro in major sections of this movie.
And I can agree with a lot of the points you just made. For me, I'm more used to cringe humor. That is more like my cup of tea. So I was, like, able to, like, ingratiate myself with him sounds weird, but I was able to, like, absorb him, if that makes sense. I was never at a point where I had to look away. I was always so perplexed and, like, astounded that a man could go to that level that I was kind of, like, drawn in, like, an interested way that way. And also his, I don't remember the character's name. I think it was Marsha, his friend who, like, desperately wanted to give the note to Jerry.
Yeah, I can't remember her name.
She was the actress for, I don't remember her name either. She was outstanding. The scene where it's them, with I'll refrain from spoilers, but it's they're having dinner together, and she's talking to him is insanity. And a lot of it is just her talking. Jerry Lewis is completely silent. And it's just really weird, like, monologue about, like, do you like the space? I made it special for you. There's candles everywhere. This really weird, like, it's an odd kind of intimacy. Because for her, this is the most romantic thing on planet Earth. And it's her moment with, like, her idol, and he's petrified. So you kind of feel both eras of that. You kind of feel like you're not sympathetic for her almost, but you kind of, like, you've been in situations like that where it's like a first date or a romantic encounter where you're like, the awkwardness of it is fueled by her awkwardness and the terrifying nature of the situation. But more, like, in broad terms, the film, I think De Niro is amazing. I think Scorsese is amazing. The script for this film was outstanding. The direction was outstanding, as you'd expect from Scorsese.
Absolutely.
And obviously, multiple Academy Award nominee and winner for Godfather Part 2, Robert De Niro, is an exceptional talent as well. So any kind of, like, ending thoughts on King of Comedy before we take our first PSA break?
No, not that I can think of. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. Hey guys, thank you for listening so far. We're going to go to our PSA break, and we'll be back to talk to you guys in a little bit.
I'm jumping in with my clothes on!
Most party fouls are pretty dumb, but if you decide to drink and drive underage, you could lose your license and your freedom. Learn more at ultimatepartyfoul.org, brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hey guys, welcome back to Film And. Me and Claire are going to continue our discussion of King of Comedy, but now we're going to shift it a little bit into its connections to Joker. Like I mentioned, Martin Scorsese has been cited as a major influence for Todd Phillips in this film, and the reviews I've been lucky enough to read are very much citing that King of Comedy and Taxi Driver are both very apparent in the style of the film. So Clay, having that in mind, how these films are connected stylistically, do you think Arthur Fleck's character is going to borrow from Rupert Pupkin, and in which ways?
How do I think he's going to borrow from him? Well, Joaquin Phoenix as an actor rarely seems to play a leading man. He is always just sort of introverted and kind of awkward. I think his closest to like traditional leading man status was Walk the Line. Other than that, he's mostly like, I know him from The Master and the M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Village, that's it. So I know him mostly for very introverted roles, and so I guess that would more be about how Arthur Fleck was written in a way that was more inspired by the sort of social outcast of Rupert Pupkin and, by extension, Travis Bickle, and how Joaquin Phoenix, in his career thus far, has sort of represented that role already, so his casting is kind of ideal.
Yeah. So you think it's more of a philosophical similarity as opposed to like direct character beats being borrowed from Rupert Pupkin?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I think that as well. I lean a little bit more towards Todd Phillips is going to be quite more apparent with his borrowing. Like we already know, the references, obviously Robert De Niro was playing the Jerry Lewis role in this movie, and we know from certain trailers that Joker goes on the talk show. We'll get to a little bit about this in our next topic, but I'm concerned about what Joker does at said talk show.
That's fair. That's very fair.
And this movie, I can see definitely, obviously, the clear inspiration of the talk show element and stuff. With Travis Bickle, I don't think Joker will do much, like, spoilers for the movie we're discussing, but much kidnapping or anything along those lines to get his goals. We've seen that it's much more, like, violent crimes. And Rupert Pupkin is obviously not, like, I would not consider him a violent man.
No, he's not.
No. He's smart. He's more manipulative. When I think Joker is more just, as we've seen with previous incarnations of the character, more sporadic, more crazy. So I don't think he'll borrow from Rupert Pupkin in an intellectual sense. I think he might be Rupert Pupkin, like, turned up to 11. If Rupert Pupkin was violent, this is the man we would see.
I can see that.
Yeah. And speaking of violence, there's been a lot of controversy with the film coming out of its festival premieres, with many citing it as Joker's character being a patron saint of incels and promoting certain incel culture. And recently there's been controversy where certain groups feel the film should not be screened, or Warner Bros. Should take direct action to address said controversy, and specifically talk about gun violence, which leads back to my fears about what Joker does at said talk show. I've not read anything regarding that topic in reviews, and obviously that would be a major spoiler if it was included. Warner Bros. Has since addressed said controversy in a statement yesterday. They said, the statement reads, "Make no mistake, neither the fictional character Joker nor the film is an endorsement of real-world violence of any kind. It is not the intention of the film, the filmmakers, or the studio to hold this character up as a hero." Now, Clay, with that statement in mind, what are you thinking about the controversy surrounding Joker?
I think it's the same as whenever a violent movie comes out. It's not like we haven't heard these concerns before. Like, we've been hearing, like, I mean, remember back in the 1970s when A Clockwork Orange and Taxi Driver came out and everyone was, how dare this movie be so violent? And we're not talking about that today. I think the discussion of real-life gun violence is just a byproduct of a movie like this coming out.
Yeah. I think, well, obviously, with the recent history we've encountered, gun violence is a sad part of our everyday lives, where we're hearing about it nearly every single day. And I don't believe a movie like Joker would pretendingly lead to that kind of violence. And I understand what Warner Bros. Is trying to say, but I also do somewhat agree with the families that are concerned about the nature of violence portrayed in the movie. And like we saw with Heath Ledger's Joker, and like I'm not too ingrained with Reddit and that culture, but we've seen that characters that are played as villains, that are like, you know, innocently betrayed by amazing, talented actors, sometimes get misread as symbols of hate or sexism, like with Heath Ledger's Joker and Rorschach before him. And I've spoken briefly about this with Clay, where I fear that Joaquin Phoenix's Joker will have the same kind of impact. And that's not Todd Phillips' fault. That's not Todd Phillips' fault. That's not Joaquin Phoenix's fault. That's not Warner Brothers' fault. And there's probably nothing they could do to stop it. I think it's just the nature of, like, when you have well-written characters that are controversial, and that's part of the joy of filmmaking, part of the art form, is writing characters that do spark conversation. And sadly, there are those that misread that conversation and turn it into something it is not. It is not Warner Bros.' fault. And I don't think anything bad will happen, and I sure as heck hope it does not. It's a very slippery slope and a conversation I think we need to be having. But I don't think the answer is limiting creative freedom. I think there are various different answers that belong in a very different podcast that discusses politics. But it's not the movie's fault. It's the way that we treat mental health and the access to firearms in this country. So don't blame Joker. Blame the certain systems and do something about it if you're actually concerned. That got very deep. I'm very sorry.
No worries. I know you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, going off of that, I think, on a level, I don't think it matters the characters we put out in the media, in whether it's film or in books or comics or whatever. People are going to read what they want to see, and people are going to latch on to what they want to latch on to. Like, remember when Pepe became a symbol for, what was it, white nationalism or something like that?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, no, there's no connection to that. People, like, white nationalists indoctrinated Pepe to become their symbol without any sort of rational connections. So to me, it almost doesn't matter the characters you're creating, because sick people are going to do sick things, and they're going to read what they want to read. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. So I guess the closing points on me and Clay's thoughts on this, and if I misquote you in any way, please interject, Clay.
I absolutely will.
But regardless of what this film was, and I think to portray Joker in the way that he is often portrayed in comic book media, there's a sad byproduct where someone will misread that behavior that is supposed to be portrayed as heinous, and often is portrayed as heinous, and they think about it being rewarding in some way. And I think, like one of our said, they're not trying to portray Joaquin Phoenix's Joker as the hero of the film, despite him being the protagonist of the film. This film was not supporting him. It's a commentary on how we should be careful about mental health and watch out so we don't have instances of people like Arthur Fleck or Raputkin. It's not about condoning behavior. It's about shining a light on it and addressing it.
It'd be a very different story if about midway through the film, Joaquin Phoenix just looks into the camera and is like, "Hey folks, gun violence, really cool."
Yes, the film does not support it. And I've not seen Joker yet, but I seriously doubt we'll have a moment where Joaquin Phoenix or anyone involved with the production directly supports this character. Okay, well, Clay, that's wrapping up of the second episode of Film And. Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Would you like to plug your Letterboxd or other media so people can follow you?
Is it cool if I plugged my LinkedIn?
Yeah, you can plug your LinkedIn.
All right, connect with me on LinkedIn. My name is Clay Neuger. I like being on sets.
And I'm Connor Randolph. If you want more thoughts on the films we talked about today, or in general, follow me on Letterboxd at Cranberry18. That is CRAND Berry18. Thank you very much for listening, guys. See you next week.